Before he mastered the street, he learned to survive it. Before the Quizma became a man always in motion, he was a young man learning what happened when life refused to stand still. His transformation did not begin beneath polished lights, inside comfortable rooms, or through theories about masculinity. It began much earlier, through an upbringing rigid enough to demand discipline and unpredictable enough to sharpen instinct. Circumstances taught him lessons before he had language for them.
Fais attention.
Listen carefully. Know where you are. Understand who is around you. Do not assume tomorrow will resemble today. For some children, awareness develops gradually. For him, awareness became equipment. He learned that a room could change before anyone raised a voice. He noticed the small signals, an altered expression, a different tone, the sudden silence that arrived before trouble. He learned that people frequently communicated their intentions several seconds before their words caught up. This was not street mastery yet. It was survival. And survival has a peculiar way of educating a person. A comfortable environment teaches you what should happen. A difficult environment teaches you what might. That difference became the foundation of the Sigma. He grew private because privacy gave him control. He became self-reliant because circumstances repeatedly suggested that rescue could not always be scheduled. He learned to process problems internally, to examine possibilities before acting, and to hold something of himself in reserve. From the outside, it could look like detachment. Inside, machinery was turning. His mind became a radar system. People, distances, tone, risk, opportunity, exit. The young Sigma was building maps wherever maps did not exist. There was something almost wolf-like about it, though not in the cartoonish sense often attached to the lone wolf mythology. A wolf does not survive the wilderness because it spends every hour demonstrating aggression. It survives because it understands terrain. It knows when to advance, when to conserve energy, when to watch, and when something in the environment has changed. The Quizma would eventually learn the same economy. But first he had to endure. Hard circumstances possess no interest in whether a lesson feels fair. They simply present the test. Loss, disappointment, scarcity, conflict, misjudgment, unexpected reversals. Moments when the plan collapsed and there was nobody standing nearby with another one. Each experience hardened something. Yet the most important transformation was not hardness itself. Hardness alone is brittle. The deeper lesson was adaptation. His early Sigma instincts told him to withdraw, become quieter, depend on less, and protect his interior world. Those instincts served him. For a time, they may even have saved him. But eventually the strategy that protects a boy can imprison a man. The Quizma began discovering that survival could not remain his permanent identity. Suspicion had to mature into discernment. Isolation had to become selective solitude. Emotional restraint had to become emotional intelligence. Hypervigilance had to become awareness. And toughness had to become fortitude. That transition was neither elegant nor immediate. He learned through collisions. A friendship revealed a blind spot. A betrayal taught him the price of ignoring evidence. A confrontation showed him that restraint could be stronger than retaliation. A missed opportunity demonstrated the cost of hesitation. A setback taught improvisation. An embarrassment stripped away vanity. Every lesson chipped something unnecessary from him. Slowly, his attention shifted from appearing strong to becoming durable. That distinction changed everything. Strength wants to win the moment. Fortitude wants to survive the season. And the Quizma had survived enough seasons to understand the difference. By adulthood, difficulty no longer automatically felt foreign. He had learned to operate inside uncertainty. When plans shifted, he adjusted. When people changed, he observed. When circumstances narrowed, he looked for another route. This is where the street began calling to him. Not because he was searching for trouble. Because movement felt natural. After years of learning that conditions could change without warning, remaining psychologically stationary made little sense. So he moved. Through neighborhoods. Through social circles. through occupations, through conversations, through mistakes, through identities. And with every mile, the survivor became more observant. The Sigma had learned how to stand alone. The Quizma was about to learn how to move among everyone else without losing himself. The street would become his next classroom. And unlike the classrooms of his childhood, there would be no bell announcing when the lesson began. The street turns instinct into intelligence. The street does not hand out diplomas. It gives tests. Some last 30 seconds. A stranger approaches too quickly. A conversation changes tone. Someone applies pressure where there should be none. A person smiles while their body says something entirely different. A door closes unexpectedly. A plan falls apart 3 blocks from where it was supposed to work. To the inexperienced man, these moments feel random. To the Quizma, they become information. Years of pressure had already trained him to notice irregularities. Now movement gave those instincts somewhere to mature. He began reading environments the way other people read headlines. Who controls the room without speaking? Who is performing? Who is nervous? Who is watching? Who is pretending not to watch? Who treats the server differently when the important person leaves the table? Who becomes louder when challenged? Who suddenly becomes agreeable when money enters the conversation? The street teaches character through behavior because people rarely remain polished when life interrupts the script. Traffic exposes impatience. Money exposes priorities. Rejection exposes ego. Inconvenience exposes temperament. Power exposes character. The Quizma watches all of it. And because he keeps moving, his sample size keeps growing. This is where instinct develops into social intelligence. What outsiders may call intuition is often accumulated pattern recognition. The brain has seen enough fragments that it begins recognizing the whole before conscious language can explain it. A pause lasts a fraction too long. A compliment arrives too conveniently. An invitation carries pressure beneath the friendliness. Something does not fit. The old survival instinct notices first. But the evolved Quizma has learned an important distinction. Not every uneasy feeling is truth. Sometimes yesterday's wound is trying to interpret today's stranger. Trauma can impersonate intuition. Fear can dress itself as discernment. So he does not automatically react. He verifies. Observe. Wait. Compare. Test. That 4-step rhythm becomes part of his street mastery. Someone seems dishonest. He watches. Someone appears envious. He watches. Someone seems sincere. He still watches. The man who rushes to judgment gives his emotions the steering wheel. The Quizma lets evidence drive. This patience produces an unusual kind of confidence. He no longer needs to prove that he recognizes every challenge. In fact, one of his greatest advantages is letting other people believe he has missed something. There is almost a quiet satisfaction in it. Someone underestimates him. He does not rush to correct them. Someone mistakes restraint for weakness. He leaves the misunderstanding intact. Someone believes silence means ignorance. He lets them keep talking. Not because he is plotting revenge. Because experience has taught him that people become remarkably generous with information when they believe they are in control. The Quizma simply listens. This is where his wolf-like instinct becomes particularly visible. The inexperienced animal reacts to every movement in the brush. The experienced one distinguishes noise from danger. The Quizma learns the human equivalent. Not every insult deserves energy. Not every challenge deserves confrontation. Not every attractive opportunity deserves pursuit. Not every rival deserves recognition. Not every misunderstanding deserves explanation. His upbringing taught him how to endure pressure. The street teaches him where pressure deserves a response. That distinction saves enormous amounts of energy. He becomes economical. Fewer wasted words. Fewer emotional purchases. Fewer arguments bought at full price. Less ego taxation. This is not passivity. It is resource management. A man who has survived difficult circumstances knows that energy is currency. Spend it foolishly, and eventually life presents an important bill when the account is empty. So he chooses. And that capacity to choose changes his relationship with almost every environment. In an expensive room, he does not worship wealth. In a rough environment, he does not perform toughness. Among intellectuals, he does not become intimidated by vocabulary. Among ordinary working people, he does not mistake simplicity for ignorance. He has witnessed too many contradictions. Wealthy people with poor judgment. Poor people with extraordinary wisdom. Beautiful people carrying enormous insecurity. Quiet people commanding entire rooms. Loud people desperate to be noticed. The street gradually destroys simplistic categories. And this is where the Sigma mythology begins cracking. The Sigma once needed distance because distance gave him control. The Quizma develops enough internal control to enter the environment itself. He can mix without dissolving, adapt without performing, observe without hiding, speak without surrendering, leave without explaining. The change is subtle, but profound. He is no longer merely protected from the world. He is becoming fluent in it. That is street intelligence. Not knowing every neighborhood. Not pretending to be dangerous. Not collecting stories about what you survived. Street intelligence is understanding that every environment has a language. Every person has patterns. Every pressure point carries information. And every situation changes the moment emotion outruns judgment. The Quizma learned this because life forced him to. Now he uses it because it works. And somewhere along that journey, something remarkable happens. The man who once survived unpredictable environments begins performing unusually well inside them. What once threatened him has become familiar terrain. The transformation is nearly complete. The survivor is becoming the street master. A man always in motion. Watch the mature Quizma move through the street, and the first thing you notice may be what he does not do. He does not appear hurried. He does not repeatedly check whether people are watching him. He does not manufacture menace. He does not announce confidence. His movements have become quieter because his nervous system has accumulated evidence that panic rarely improves an outcome. He has seen plans collapse before, seen people reverse themselves, seen opportunities disappear, seen trouble approach wearing a smile, seen difficult circumstances arrive without an appointment. The unfamiliar no longer automatically frightens him. He has met uncertainty too many times. In fact, uncertainty is where something old and visceral inside him becomes unusually sharp. The wolf raises its head. Listen. Look. Assess. Move. But now that instinct has been civilized by intelligence, the younger Sigma reacted. The Quizma responds. That is the final transformation. His upbringing gave him toughness. Hardship gave him endurance. Solitude gave him introspection. The street gave him range. Together, they produced something greater than any one of those qualities alone. Adaptability. Put him in comfort and he does not become soft. Put him in scarcity and he does not immediately panic. Put him among strangers and he observes. Put him under pressure and his thinking becomes deliberate. Put him alone and he reflects. Put him in motion and he becomes almost instinctively alive. He is not invulnerable. That would make him fictional. He can still be surprised, still disappointed, still hurt, still make the wrong judgment. Street mastery does not make a man incapable of falling. It changes what happens after he hits the ground. Recovery becomes faster. That may be one of the Quizma's greatest advantages. He has learned not to convert temporary circumstances into permanent identities. He lost. That does not make him a loser. He was betrayed. That does not make everyone untrustworthy. He failed. That does not make movement pointless. He misread someone. Correct the model. Keep moving. A rejection becomes information. A mistake becomes tuition. A closed door becomes geography. A betrayal becomes evidence. A difficult year becomes terrain he now knows how to cross. This is fortitude in its mature form. Not pretending that pain does not hurt. Not romanticizing suffering. not smiling through circumstances that deserve grief. Fortitude is remaining capable of movement when life has given you convincing reasons to stop. And the Quizma keeps moving. Sometimes literally. Shoes on. Door closed behind him. City ahead. Other times the movement is internal. A belief changes. A relationship expires. A habit gets discarded. An old identity is retired. The world may still recognize yesterday's version while he is already several blocks into becoming tomorrow's. This is why attempts to define him often fail. People study the photograph. The Quizma lives in the next frame. They think they know the quiet man. Then he speaks. They think they understand the solitary man. Then they watch him navigate a crowded room. They believe he avoids confrontation. Then they discover that he merely refuses unnecessary confrontation. They mistake patience for weakness until patience reaches its limit. They believe his calm means nothing is happening. Meanwhile, calculations are stacking behind his eyes. Distance, tone, timing, intent, options. There is something nearly primal beneath the Polish, but it is no longer wild. It has been trained. That may be the essence of the Quizma's street mastery. The goal was never to become harder than everyone around him. It was to become harder to derail. There is a profound difference. Hard men eventually encounter something harder. Adaptive men change shape around obstacles. The rigid Sigma survives by becoming stone. The evolved Quizma survives by becoming water when the terrain demands it. Firm enough to hold form. Fluid enough to move. Patient enough to wait. Forceful enough to act. That is why the street suits him. The street never stops changing. Neither does he. Yet beneath every adjustment remains a recognizable center. He does not surrender himself to fit the environment. He alters the method, not the foundation. That is the final lesson of his rigorous upbringing. The world cannot always be controlled. Circumstances cannot always be predicted. People cannot always be trusted. Plans cannot always be preserved. But response remains negotiable. And the Quizma has spent a lifetime negotiating it. So he walks. Not because he is running from something. Not because he must constantly prove himself. He walks because motion has become the language of his evolution. The young man once moved to escape pressure. The Sigma moved to protect himself from it. The Quizma moves because he has learned how to operate inside it. That is the reversal. The environment that once conditioned his survival instincts has become the environment where his greatest strengths now reveal themselves. The street did not tame him. It refined him. And somewhere between hardship and experience, between solitude and exposure, between instinct and intelligence, the man who once merely endured difficult circumstances became remarkably difficult for circumstances to control. So what did the street actually teach the Quizma? It taught him that survival is only the first draft of strength. His rigorous upbringing gave him vigilance. Hard circumstances gave him fortitude. Solitude taught him self-reliance. The street transformed those qualities into discernment, timing, adaptability, and control. The wolf-like instinct never disappeared. It matured. What once told him simply to survive now tells him when to observe, when to conserve energy, when to change direction, when to stand his ground, and when to keep walking. That is why the Quizma remains a man in motion. He understands that the moment you become permanently comfortable with one version of yourself, life is already preparing a circumstance that version may not know how to handle. The Sigma learned to survive alone. The Quizma learned to survive anywhere. And perhaps that is the real definition of street mastery. Not controlling every environment you enter, but becoming so adaptable that the environment has a difficult time controlling you. If you have ever noticed that your hardest circumstances eventually produced some of your sharpest instincts, tell us in the comments what life taught you that no classroom ever could. And subscribe to the Sigma Evolution channel so you do not miss the next chapter in the Quizma's evolution. Because around here, evolution never means becoming someone else. It means discovering just how many versions of yourself were waiting to survive the next terrain.